The sun hung low over the dusty outskirts of Willow Creek, casting long shadows across the cracked pavement of the county courthouse steps. A little girl, no more than 6, stood alone at the edge of the parking lot, her small frame swallowed by the oversized denim jacket that dragged on the ground. Maisie Turner clutched a crumpled drawing in her fists, stick figures of a family under a bright sun, her wide eyes scanning the empty lot with a mix of hope and fear. The air smelled of dry earth and exhaust from passing trucks, but no one stopped. Inside the courthouse, her mother was locked in another endless hearing, fighting whispers of eviction and lost land, while Maisie waited, her tiny voice lost in the wind. A group of rough-looking men lingered nearby, their laughter cutting sharp as they eyed the child like an afterthought, one of them muttering about easy pickings in this forgotten corner of the world. Fear etched lines on her face, too young for such worry, her lower lip trembling as she whispered to herself, "Daddy said someone would come, someone with the mark." The rumble started faint, like thunder rolling in from the horizon, growing into a symphony of roaring engines that shook the ground. A lone motorcycle crested the hill, its chrome gleaming under the fading light, kicking up gravel in a plume that silenced the men's jeers. Logan Trace Rowe, 44 and weathered by years on the road, eased his bike to a stop at the lot's edge. His leather vest bore the faded emblem of Iron Promise, a ironclad fist over a broken chain, symbols of oaths that bound tighter than blood. Salt and pepper hair whipped back from his scarred face, and his eyes, sharp as a hawk's, locked on the girl. He'd ridden into Willow Creek on a whim, chasing echoes of old routes, but something in the air pulled him here, like the tug of a half-forgotten vow. He killed the engine, the sudden silence amplifying the girl's soft sniffles, and swung his leg over the seat, boots crunching on the gravel as he approached. Maisie froze, then stepped forward, her drawing forgotten in the dirt. She tilted her head up, studying him with the unfiltered gaze only a child could muster. "Mister," she said, her voice a fragile thread, "are you my daddy's friend, the one with the picture on his arm?" Before he could respond, she reached out a tentative hand, pointing to the faded ink curling along his forearm, a compass rose, etched with deliberate lines encircled by the initials JTR. The tattoo had blurred over 2 decades, but the design was unmistakable. Inked in a dusty Iraqi outpost under a sky thick with sandstorms, Logan's breath caught, the world narrowing to that small finger tracing the air above his skin. JTR. Jack Turner Rowe, the man who'd towed his stranded bike across a blistering desert when Logan's unit was cut off, sharing water from his canteen and a promise forged in the heat. "If anything happens to me, Trace, look after mine. My girl's got my compass. Keep her pointed true." Logan had laughed it off then, brothers in arms against the chaos, but Jack vanished stateside years later, swallowed by shadows Logan never chased. He knelt to her level, the scent of leather and road dust mingling with the faint sweetness of her strawberry shampoo. "What's your name, kid?" he asked, voice gravelly but gentle, like the low hum of an idling engine. "Maisie," she replied, eyes lighting with a spark of recognition. "Maisie Turner. Daddy had the same picture. He said if I ever saw it, that person would help us. Mummy's inside, and the bad men took our farm. Daddy's gone, and they say he ran away, but he wouldn't. He promised he'd come back." Logan's jaw tightened, the initials burning like fresh ink. Jack gone. The man who'd pulled him from the brink, who'd spoken of a wife named Elena and a baby on the way, dreams of quiet acres back home. This wasn't coincidence. It was the pull of an old oath resurfacing, demanding payment in a world that chewed up promises like gravel under tires. He glanced at the courthouse doors, where muffled voices argued over deeds and debts, and then at the men slinking away, their bravado deflated by his presence. "Your daddy was a good man, Maisie. Saved my hide once. I think it's time I returned the favor." As the sun dipped lower, painting the sky in streaks of orange and gold, Logan felt the weight of iron promise stir in his veins. The crew he'd ride with through hell if needed, brothers who'd honor a vow without question. He scooped up her drawing, folding it carefully into his pocket, and took her hand. The touch was small, but it anchored him, a reminder that some debts outlived the deserts and the doubts. Inside, Elena Turner emerged from the hearing, her face pale and drawn, clutching papers that spelled out threats veiled as legal notices. She froze at the sight of Logan, the tattoo peeking from his rolled sleeve, and whispered, "Jack. You knew Jack." Logan nodded, the compass on his arm seeming to pulse with unspoken stories. "More than knew him. He made me promise to watch out for you both if trouble came knocking. Looks like it's here." Elena's eyes welled, the exhaustion of solitary battles cracking under the weight of unexpected alliance. Maisie tugged at her mother's skirt, beaming up at Logan. "See, Mommy, the friend came." But as they walked toward his bike, the horizon darkened, not with sunset, but with the distant growl of approaching vehicles. Shadows of the land scheme that had claimed Jack's fields, men who'd silenced him for standing firm. Logan mounted up, Elena and Maisie behind him on a spare ride he'd call in from the crew. The engine roared to life again, a defiant call against the encroaching dusk. This was no random stop. It was the spark of redemption, a promise pulling him back into the fray. Iron promise would rally, 50 strong if needed, because loyalty didn't fade like ink. It guided true through dust and deceit, toward justice that whispered louder than any storm. The road ahead twisted like the veins of old scars, but for the first time in years, Logan felt the compass point north, not to escape, but to protect. Maisie's small hand on his shoulder was the vow made real, a child's trust weaving him into a family forged in absence. As they rode out, the courthouse shrank in the rear view, a monument to corruption left behind. Yet Logan knew this was just the beginning. Jack's silence hid deeper wounds, and honoring it meant facing the quiet predators who'd torn a home apart. The wind whipped past, carrying the scent of freedom laced with resolve. And in that moment, the biker and the broken family became bound by threads stronger than steel. The twilight bled into night as Logan's bike cut through the winding backroads of Willow Creek, the headlights slicing shadows from the asphalt like a knife through fog. Elena clung to the handlebars of the spare motorcycle he'd summoned from a nearby garage contact, her knuckles white against the throttle, while Maisie nestled against her back. The child's arms wrapped tight around her mother's waist. The air rushed cool and sharp, carrying the tang of pine from the encroaching hills and the faint, acrid bite of diesel from distant rigs. Logan's mind raced faster than the engine's growl, piecing together fragments of Jack's life from their shared past. The letters Jack had sent from home, sketches of fertile acres he'd fought to claim after the service, dreams of a legacy rooted in soil rather than sand. Behind them, the pursuing vehicles, 3 black sedans, sleek and unmarked, gained ground, their headlights piercing the dark like accusatory eyes. Logan glanced in his mirror, the reflection catching the glint of his compass tattoo under the moon's pale glow. These weren't random chasers. They reeked of the same institutional rot that had poisoned Jack's fields, a scheme to seize land under the guise of development, bullying small holders into silence. Jack had refused, standing firm with a quiet defiance that Logan admired even then. Now, that defiance echoed in the little girl trailing him, her trust a fragile flame he wouldn't let extinguish. He twisted the throttle, veering onto a narrower path that snaked toward the old Iron Promise outpost, a weathered barn on the edge of town, once a way station for riders honoring oaths across state lines. The crew would be there. He'd radioed ahead on the encrypted line stitched into his vest. Brothers like Razor, the wiry mechanic with scars from a border run, and Doc, a former medic who'd patched more than wounds in his day. They weren't outlaws, not in the twisted sense the world painted them, just men and women bound by codes deeper than law, pulling each other from the wreckage of life. The barn loomed ahead, its silhouette framed by floodlights that buzzed like angry hornets. Engines revved in response as the Iron Promise riders emerged from the shadows, a dozen bikes forming a loose perimeter, their riders dismounting with the fluid precision of a pack sensing threat. Razor stepped forward first, his grease-stained hands wiping on a rag, eyes narrowing at the sedans closing in. "Trace, you look like you've dragged trouble home. Who's the cargo?" Logan braked hard, kicking up dust that swirled in the beams. Elena and Maisie pulled up beside him, the girl's face pale but curious, her small fingers tracing the edge of her mother's jacket. "Family," Logan said simply, swinging off his seat. He nodded toward Elena, who slid Maisie down gently, the child's feet touching ground with a soft thud. "This is Elena and Maisie Turner, Jack's kin." He called in a marker from way back. The name rippled through the group like a stone in still water. Doc, his silver hair tied back, approached Elena with a nod that spoke volumes. He'd known Jack too, from the same dusty deployments. "Jack Turner, the one who wired us parts during that sandstorm siege. Hell, he pulled my truck out of a ditch once, stateside." Eleanor's eyes softened, a flicker of recognition cutting through her wariness. She extended a hand, her voice steady despite the tremor. "He talked about you all, said Iron Promise was the only crew that mattered when the world turned its back." Maisie tugged at Logan's pant leg, looking up with those wide eyes that seemed to hold the weight of unspoken pleas. "Are these your friends, like Daddy's?" He knelt again, the gravel biting into his knees, and ruffled her hair lightly. "Yeah, kid, the best kind. They keep promises, no matter how old." The sedans screeched to a halt at the barn's perimeter, doors slamming like punctuation marks in the night. 4 men stepped out, suits crisp but faces hardened, the lead one flashing a badge that gleamed falsely under the lights. "Mr. Rowe," he called, a voice oily with authority. "This doesn't concern you. The Turners are in violation of county ordinances. Hand them over, and we'll handle it quietly." Logan rose slowly, his stance a wall between them and the group. The air thickened with tension, the scent of oiled leather and revving bikes underscoring the standoff. Razor flanked him, arms crossed, while Doc guided Elena and Maisie toward the barn's safety. "Ordinances," Logan echoed, his tone low and edged like a blade drawn slow. "Funny word for stealing land from folks who earned it. Jack didn't run, he stood up, and I'm standing with him now." The lead man's smile didn't reach his eyes. Jack Turner abandoned his property. Debts piled up. "We're just enforcing the law." "Nay." But his gaze flicked to the tattoo on Logan's arm, exposed as he rolled up his sleeve, the compass catching the light. A hesitation, brief but telling. They knew the symbol, or at least feared what it represented. Whispers of Iron Promise's reach, stories of riders who'd unraveled schemes from the shadows, exposing corruption without a shot fired. Elena stepped forward then, her voice cutting through the standoff like sunlight through clouds. "He didn't abandon us. You drove him out. Threats, forged papers. I have the letters, the recordings. Jack promised our home would stay ours." Maisie's hand found hers, squeezing tight. And in that grip, Logan saw the thread of Jack's vow unbroken, passed from father to daughter. The man shifted, signaling his crew to stand down as more bikes rumbled in from the distance. Reinforcements, the full weight of Iron Promise mobilizing. No guns drawn, no shouts, just the unyielding presence of loyalty made manifest. "This isn't over," the lead spat, retreating to his car. The sedans peeled away, taillights fading into the black, leaving the night to settle like dust after a storm. Inside the barn, under the warm flicker of lanterns, the crew gathered around a scarred wooden table. Maps of the Turner land spread out, Elena recounting the quiet siege, anonymous calls, falsified liens. Jack's last stand against developers hungry for the valley's water rights. Logan traced the compass on his arm, the initials JTR, a beacon pulling truths to light. "We dig," he said, voice resolute. "Find what happened to Jack. Honor starts with clarity." As Maisie dozed on a blanket, her drawing tucked beside her, Elena met Logan's gaze across the table. "You didn't have to come back for this." He shook his head, the weight of years lifting just a fraction. "Promises don't expire. Jack saved me once. Now, we save what's his." The night deepened. The barn, a fortress of shared resolve, where old scars wove into new bonds. Outside, the wind whispered through the pines, carrying the promise of dawn and the justice that followed silent oaths. Iron Promise wasn't just a name. It was the compass guiding them through the moral fog toward a redemption that healed more than it harmed. And now, I invite you to leave in the comments where you're watching from and the exact hour you heard this story. We wish to know how far these northern confessions travel and at what moments they reach you. Dawn crept over the Willow Creek hills like a reluctant witness, painting the barn's weathered planks in hues of rose and amber. Inside, the air hung heavy with the aroma of strong coffee brewing on a hot plate and the faint metallic tang of engine oil from tools scattered across the workbench. Logan leaned against the table, his calloused fingers drumming a slow rhythm on the edge of a faded map, while Eleanor sat across from him, her eyes ringed with the shadows of sleepless nights. Maisie had curled up in a corner on a pile of clean rags, her chest rising and falling in the peace only children could claim amid chaos, oblivious to the web of deceit unraveling around her. Razor hunched over a laptop borrowed from Doc's kit, his fingers flying across the keys, pulling threads from digital archives that the suits outside wouldn't want touched. "Got something," he muttered. The screen's glow casting harsh lines on his angular face. Jack's Land, prime spot along the creek, filed complaints last year against a shell company, Valley Growth Partners. No permits, just pressure tactics. Foreclosures faked through a crooked clerk downtown. Elena's hand tightened on a mug of steaming liquid, the ceramic warm against her palm. "That's what Jack said. They wanted the water rights for some resort scheme, but he wouldn't sell. Said it was our legacy, passed down from his folks." Her voice cracked on the last word, memories flooding back like the creek after a storm. Jack's broad shoulders in the fields at sunset, teaching Maisie to plant seeds, his laugh echoing off the barn they'd built together. Now that barn stood empty, claimed by the very forces circling them. Logan pushed back from the table, the chair scraping like a warning against the wooden floor. He paced to the open barn door, where the morning mist clung to the grass, carrying the fresh scent of dew-kissed earth. The compass tattoo itched under his sleeve, a phantom pull urging him forward. Jack hadn't just saved him in the desert. He'd shared stories under starlit skies, tales of a home waiting beyond the tours. "We need eyes on the ground," Logan said, turning back to the group. "Doc, you and Razor hit the clerk's office. Quiet like. No badges, just questions that stick." Doc nodded, his medic's bag slung over one shoulder, the faint scent of antiseptic still clinging to him from old habits. "On it. I've got a contact there. A nurse who moonlights as a paralegal. She owes me for patching her brother after a wreck." The crew murmured agreements, a low hum of engines idling in their veins, ready to roll. But as the group dispersed, Eleanor rose, her steps hesitant toward Logan. "Wait, there's more. Jack left a box before he disappeared, hidden in the attic. I didn't touch it, too scared. But if it's what they want—" She trailed off, glancing at Maisie, who stirred slightly in her sleep, mumbling about Daddy's treasure. Logan's gaze softened, the lines around his eyes deepening like cracks in sun-baked clay. "Then we go get it, now, before they circle back." He radioed for a couple of riders to escort them. a woman named Sierra, tough as riveted steel with a braid down her back, and her partner Bull, whose massive frame belied a gentle touch with kids. The bikes fired up outside, a chorus of throaty roars that scattered birds from the eaves. The ride to the Turner farm was a blur of winding roads, flanked by golden fields, the sun climbing higher and burning off the mist. Dust devils danced in the distance, swirling like ghosts of unsettled scores. Elena led the way on her own bike now, borrowed from the outpost, her posture straighter with each mile, as if reclaiming the path Jack had tread. Maisie rode pillion with Sierra, the girl's laughter pealing out when the wind tugged at her hair. A sound that cut through Logan's resolve like sunlight through storm clouds. The farm appeared around a bend, its fence sagging under neglect, the house a squat silhouette against the sky. Weeds choked the driveway, and the front porch swing creaked empty in the breeze, whispering of absences. Elena killed her engine first, the silence amplifying the creak of gates and the distant low of cattle from neighboring spreads. "This way," she said, leading them around back to a rickety ladder propped against the house. Logan climbed first, his boots thudding on the rungs, the wood groaning under his weight. The attic smelled of aged wood and forgotten summers, musty, with hints of lavender from old linens. Sunlight filtered through cracks, dust motes swirling like fireflies in reverse. He spotted the box immediately, a metal strongbox tucked behind rafters, its lock rusted but intact. Jack's handwriting scrawled across the top. "For the ones who keep true." Down below, Maisie waited with Bull, her small hands clasped as she peered up at the ladder. "Is it Daddy's promise?" she asked, voice laced with wonder. Bull knelt, his voice a rumble. "Reckon it is, little one. Promises like that don't break easy." Logan hauled the box down, setting it on the kitchen table inside, where faded curtains filtered the light into soft patterns on the scarred oak. Elena pried it open with a key from her necklace, her breath catching at the contents. Stacks of letters, grainy photos of Jack in uniform, and a small recorder, its tape labeled "Truth for Maisie." She hit play, and Jack's voice filled the room, gravelly, urgent, the same timbre Logan remembered from desert nights. "Elena, if you're hearing this, things went south. Valley growth. They're not developers. They're fronts for bigger fish. Bribed the sheriff, forged my signature on liens. I stood firm, but they came at night, took me for questioning, said I'd sign or lose everything. Won't break. Tell Maisie her daddy's compass points home, and if Iron Promise hears, trace if you're out there, honor what we swore." The tape clicked off, leaving a void heavier than the box. Logan's fist clenched, the tattoo seeming to warm against his skin. He didn't run. They took him. Rage simmered, not hot and blinding, but cold as the creek's depths, the kind that forged steel from sorrow. Outside, Sierra's radio crackled. "Trace, we've got company inbound. 2 trucks, unmarked. Razors feeding cords. They're sealing the roads." Elena scooped Maisie up, the girl's eyes wide but unafraid, mirroring her mother's stealing resolve. "We can't stay, but this proves it." Logan nodded, pocketing the recorder. The crew mounted up, engines snarling to life as the first truck crested the hill, dust billowing like a war banner. They burst from the farm in formation, bikes weaving through the fields to evade the main path. The wind whipped fierce, carrying the scent of trampled grass and adrenaline. Bullets, warnings, not hits, pinged off gravel behind them, but Iron Promise rode as one, a shield of chrome and loyalty. Logan glanced back at Eleanor, her face set with the fire Jack had loved, and Maisie waving from her perch, innocent flag of the fight. They lost the pursuers in a thicket of oaks, emerging onto a hidden trail that led back to the outpost. But the tape burned in Logan's pocket, a beacon demanding more than escape. Jack was out there, silenced but not gone. Honoring the promise meant delving deeper into the heart of the corruption, where justice waited like buried roots ready to rise. As the barn came into view, reinforced now with more riders patrolling the perimeter, Logan felt the crew's bond tighten, a family woven from vows unspoken. The sun climbed to midday, its light harsh and revealing, mirroring the truths they'd unearthed. Redemption wasn't a distant horizon. It was the road they rode, one turn at a time, guided by the compass of conscience. Maisie's hand found his as they dismounted, small but sure, and in that grasp, Logan saw the legacy Jack had left. Not land, but unbreakable trust. The battle lines drew sharper, but so did their resolve, a quiet force against the storm of deceit. The midday sun beat down on the iron promise outpost like a relentless interrogator, turning the barn's tin roof into a shimmering haze that distorted the air. Inside, the group clustered around the scarred table. The strongbox's contents splayed out like pieces of a shattered mosaic. Letters yellowed at the edges, photos curling from humidity, and the recorder now silent but echoing in their minds. The scent of fresh brewed coffee mingled with the sharper edge of printer ink as Razor synced the tape to a secure drive. His brow furrowed in concentration. Dust motes danced in the slanted beams of light piercing the high windows, casting long shadows that mirrored the lengthening doubts in Logan's chest. Elena sat with Maisie on her lap, the girl's small fingers idly tracing the compass tattoo on Logan's forearm as he leaned close. The touch was innocent, a child's curiosity, but it grounded him, pulling him from the storm of memories Jack's voice had unleashed. "Daddy's voice," Maisie whispered, her eyes round as saucers, reflecting the lantern's glow even in daylight. "He sounds like he's right here." Elena smoothed her daughter's hair, her own face a mask of quiet fury, the lines of exhaustion etched deeper by the revelations. Jack hadn't fled. He'd been dragged into the underbelly of the scheme, his stand against the land grab twisted into disappearance. Logan replayed the tape once more, the grainy audio filling the space like a ghost's confession. Jack's words hung heavy. Bribes, forgeries, a night raid that left no trace. "They took me for questioning," Jack had said, his tone laced with the same unyielding resolve that had towed Logan's bike through enemy lines. The initials on Logan's arm, JTR, seemed to throb now, a living reminder of the Desert Pact, where survival meant more than breath. It meant carrying the weight for those who couldn't. "This isn't just about land," Logan said, his voice low, gravel scraping against resolve. "It's about silencing anyone who speaks truth. Valley Growth Partners, shells for what? City Council? Bigger developers with deep pockets?" Doc, poring over the letters with a magnifying glass pulled from his kit, nodded slowly. His hands, steady from years of stitching wounds under fire, trembled slightly as he unfolded a creased envelope. "Look here, Jack mentions a name, Councilman Hale, runs the county board, pushes progress that lines his own pockets. These complaints he filed, buried under red tape, but there's a witness angle, a surveyor who backed out after threats." The air thickened with the weight of it, the faint hum of cicadas outside, underscoring the barn's insulated tension, like the pause before a thunderclap. Razor leaned back, cracking his knuckles with a pop that echoed off the rafters. "I ran the plates from those trucks earlier. Registered to a private security firm, Hale's outfit. They're not cops, they're enforcers. If Jack's alive, he's probably holed up somewhere they control. Like that old mill by the creek. Abandoned officially, but whispers say it's their holding spot." The crew exchanged glances, a silent pact forming in the space between words. Sierra, wiping grease from her hands on her jeans, stepped forward, her braids swinging like a pendulum. "We ride recon, no guns, just eyes. Bull and I can scout the perimeter, get in quiet, get out quieter." Logan rose. The chairs scrape, cutting the murmur like a blade. He felt the pull of the promise sharper now, not just to Jack, but to the fragile life beside him. Maisie, who looked up with trust that pierced deeper than any bullet. "We go at dusk. Elena, you and Maisie stay here with the watch. This crew's got your back." She met his gaze, her eyes fierce with a mother's fire. "Jack trusted you once. I trust you now, but bring him home, for her." Maisie nodded solemnly, clutching a photo of her father, the image of him smiling in the fields, a talisman against the encroaching shadows. As the afternoon wore on, the outpost buzzed with preparation, the clink of tools, the low rumble of bikes being tuned, the scent of gun oil replaced by the earthy aroma of packed saddlebags. Logan stepped outside for air, the sun's heat baking into his leather vest, the compass ink warm against his skin. He thought of Jack in that attic box, preserving truth for the day it mattered. Redemption wasn't flashy. It was this, the quiet grind of loyalty, turning scars into shields. From the hill, Willow Creek sprawled below, its rooftops glinting like false promises, hiding the rot beneath. Dusk fell soft and deceptive, the sky bruising purple as the recon team rolled out, Logan at the lead, flanked by Razor, Sierra, and Bull. The engines purred low, mufflers tuned to whisper through the twilight, weaving along forgotten trails that hugged the creek's edge. Willow trees draped like sentinels, their leaves rustling secrets in the breeze, carrying the damp, mossy scent of water over rocks. The old mill emerged from the gloom, its silhouette jagged against the fading light, windows boarded like blind eyes, the wheel long stilled but creaking faintly in the current. They killed the engines a quarter-mile out, proceeding on foot through underbrush that snagged at their boots, thorns drawing thin lines of blood no one noticed. Logan's heart pounded steady, the tattoo a North Star guiding his steps, whispers of movement inside, shadows shifting behind cracks in the boards. Razor signaled halt, his binoculars catching a glint. A guard, pacing with a flashlight's beam slicing the dark. Then a sound, muffled, desperate, a thud against wood, followed by a voice, faint but unmistakable. Jack's timbre, strained but alive. "Tell them." The compass. Points true. Logan's blood ran cold, then hot. He was there, held against his will, the promise echoing even in captivity. But as they crept closer, headlights pierced the tree line. Reinforcements, tires crunching gravel like bones underfoot. The team melted into the shadows, hearts racing with the weight of discovery. Jack was no ghost. He was a prisoner in the machine's jaws. Honoring the vow meant extraction, risk be damned. Logan signaled retreat, the mill shrinking behind them as they slipped away, the night closing in like a co-conspirator. Back at the barn, under lantern light, Logan recounted the find to Eleanor, her face paling but her grip on Maisie unyielding. "He's fighting still," Logan said, the words a vow renewed. The crew rallied tighter, plans forming like storm clouds. A dawn raid, truths weaponized against lies. In Maisie's sleepy smile, Logan saw the horizon clear. Justice, not vengeance, would free Jack, weaving their chosen family whole. The compass didn't lie. It led through the dark to light earned in silence. If you felt the pull of this promise, smash that like button. It helps these stories reach more ears in need of hope. Word count 872. The first light of dawn seeped through the barn's cracks like hesitant fingers, brushing away the night's heavy veil and illuminating the faces etched with quiet determination. The air inside carried the rich, grounding scent of fresh earth from packed saddlebags and the faint, acrid bite of dew evaporating off metal. Logan stood at the table's edge, his broad shoulders casting a shadow over the sketched map of the mill, lines drawn in grease pencil marking entry points and blind spots. The compass tattoo on his forearm caught the pale glow, its faded edges a testament to time's relentless march, but its direction unwavering. Around him, the Iron Promise crew moved with the precision of a well-oiled machine, Razor checking comms with a soft click of buttons, Sierra oiling a chain that gleamed like a promise kept, Bull loading non-lethal gear, zip ties, flashbangs tuned for distraction, not harm, Elena hovered near the back, Maisie asleep in her arms, the child's cheek pressed against her mother's collarbone. Breathing soft and even, the weight of the night clung to Elena's features, but her eyes burned with the resolve forged in the attic's revelations, Jack's voice on the tape, a lifeline pulling them all forward. "Be careful," she whispered to Logan as he strapped on his vest, the iron promise emblem glinting dully. "He believed in you. We all do now." Logan paused, his hand brushing hers briefly, the touch conveying volumes in the silence. Oaths weren't words alone, they were actions, etched deeper than ink. "Truth over force," Logan replied, his voice a low rumble like an engine warming up. "We get him out clean, no shadows left behind." The crew nodded, a ripple of agreement passing through them, veterans, wanderers, all bound by the creed that justice wasn't seized with fists, but uncovered like buried roots. Doc handed out small vials of water laced with electrolytes, his medic's touch a reminder that survival meant more than escape. It meant emerging whole. They rolled out as the sky blushed pink, engines throttled low to murmur through the mist-shrouded trails, the scent of wet pine and loamy soil filling their lungs with each breath. The mill loomed closer with every mile, its hulking frame emerging from the fog like a forgotten relic, the creek's gentle rush a counterpoint to the tension coiling in Logan's gut. They parked in a copse of willows, leaves whispering secrets as the team dismounted, boots sinking into the soft bank. The air grew cooler here, laced with the musty dampness of stagnant water and rusted iron, the mill's wheel groaning faintly as if protesting the intrusion. Razor took point, his wiry frame slipping through the underbrush like smoke, signaling all clear with a gloved hand. Sierra and Bull flanked the sides, their steps measured, while Logan and Doc approached the rear, where a loose board in the wall offered entry. The wood splintered softly under Logan's pry bar, the sound muffled by the dawn's hush, revealing a dim interior thick with the smell of mold and neglect. Shadows danced from their penlights, beams cutting through dust-laden air to reveal crates stacked like silent sentinels, chains dangling from rafters like broken vows. A guard patrolled the corridor ahead, his flashlight beams sweeping lazy arcs, oblivious to the intruders until Sierra's flashbang popped, a sharp crack followed by blinding light and disorienting wail. He slumped without a fight, zip-tied and gagged, his radio silenced before it could squawk. Logan's pulse thrummed steady, the tattoo a warm anchor as they pressed on, the creak of floorboards underfoot amplifying the stakes. Jack's muffled voice from the night before echoed in his mind. "The compass points true." It guided them now, down a narrow hall to a reinforced door, its lock picked with Razor's deft fingers in seconds that stretched like hours. Inside, the room was sparse, a single bulb swinging overhead, casting harsh swings of yellow on bare concrete. Jack Turner sat chained to a pipe, his frame leaner than Logan remembered, face shadowed by a weak stubble. But his eyes, those sharp, desert-hardened eyes, flared with recognition as the door swung open. "Trace?" The word was hoarse, laced with disbelief and the raw edge of relief, carrying the faint scent of sweat and unwashed resolve. No dramatic struggle, just the quiet click of cuffs releasing, Doc's hands gentle as he checked for signs of harm. Bruises hidden under sleeves, a limp from prolonged restraint, but nothing that broke the spirit. "Promised I'd watch your back," Logan said, helping Jack to his feet, the older man's weight leaning into him like a brother reclaiming lost ground. Jack's gaze dropped to the tattoo, a ghost of a smile cracking his lips. "JTR, you kept it pointed right. They thought they could bury me here, interrogations, threats to Elena and the girl, but I held. For them." His voice steadied, the bond from those Iraqi nights resurfacing, stronger than the chains that had held him. Alarms blared suddenly, a shrill pierce through the mill's gloom, another guard rousing, or a tripped sensor. Footsteps echoed from the main floor, voices barking orders in the distance. "Time to move," Razor urged, slinging Jack's arm over his shoulder. They burst from the room, weaving through corridors where shadows played tricks, the team's formation a shield of synchronized steps. Outside, the fog provided cover, but headlights flickered to life at the mill's edge. 3 vehicles, engines growling to life, their beams slicing the mist like accusations. Bull laid down, suppressing flares, bursts of light and smoke that forced the pursuers to brake, buying precious seconds. The team sprinted for the bikes, Jack mounted behind Logan, his grip firm on the vest's edge, the wind already whipping as engines roared. "The recorder, did you get it?" Jack called over the din, the air alive with the tang of burning flares and adrenaline. Logan nodded, patting his pocket. "And more. Your stand's going public. No more silence." They tore from the tree line, bikes kicking up mud and gravel in a rooster tail that obscured their trail. The pursuing trucks bogged in the creek's soft bank, tires spinning futilely. Sierra whooped once, a sharp release of tension, but Logan's focus stayed forward, the road unspooling like a vein toward the outpost. Jack's presence behind him was a weight lifted and renewed, the promise fulfilled in motion. Not with fanfare, but with the steady hum of loyalty carrying them home. Back at the barn, as the sun crested fully, bathing the structure in golden light, Elena waited at the door, Maisie rubbing sleep from her eyes. The reunion unfolded in fragments, Jack's arms enveloping his daughter, her squeal piercing the morning like joy unchained. Elena's tears silent, streams down her cheeks as she buried her face in his shoulder. The scent of coffee and fresh bread wafted from inside, a simple anchor to normalcy amid the chaos. Logan stepped back, watching from the sidelines, the compass on his arm no longer a solitary mark, but a shared emblem, binding strangers into kin. But as the crew debriefed, Jack's words cast a new shadow. "Hale's not done. He's got ties to the state level. Evidence in my files could topple him, but it'll draw heat." Logan's jaw set, the moral compass spinning toward the next horizon. Redemption was a road, not a destination. Honoring Jack meant exposing the rot, protecting the fragile legacy of land and love. In Maisie's embrace of her father, Logan saw the promise bloom. Family chosen, justice poetic, whispering louder than any engine's roar. The day stretched ahead, fraught with plans and perils, but the bond held firm, guiding them through the gathering storm. The afternoon sun filtered through the barn's high windows in lazy shafts, gilding the dust particles that swirled like silent witnesses to the morning's triumph. The air inside hummed with a subdued energy, laced with the comforting aroma of reheated stew simmering on a portable stove, and the faint, oily residue of cleaned gear stacked neatly against the walls. Jack Turner sat on a worn bench, his arm draped around Elena's shoulders, while Maisie perched on his knee, her small hands exploring the stubble on his chin with wide-eyed fascination. The reunion's warmth lingered, a fragile bubble amid the maps and files scattered across the table. But Logan's gaze remained fixed on the horizon beyond the open door, where Willow Creek's rooftops shimmered under the heat haze. Jack's voice broke the quiet, roughened by days of captivity but steady as the creek's flow. That mill was just a holding pen. Hale's got layers, state reps in his pocket, funneling funds through those shells. The box's evidence, deeds, emails, recordings of meetings where they laughed about relocating folks like us. He rubbed his wrist where the chains had chafed, the skin marked but unbroken, a map of endurance. Elena leaned into him, her fingers tracing patterns on his hand, the touch a silent reaffirmation of vows, weathered but intact. Maisie tilted her head, oblivious to the undercurrents. "Daddy, are we going home now? To the farm with the swing?" Jack's smile faltered, the weight of reality pressing like an uninvited shadow. "Soon, Peanut. But first, We make sure no one can take it again." His eyes met Logan's across the room, a nod passing between them, brothers in the quiet forge of shared scars. The compass tattoo on Logan's arm caught the light, its needle seeming to quiver toward the unfinished path. Logan pushed off the wall, the floorboards creaking under his boots, and joined them at the table. The crew gathered loosely, Razor nursing a mug, Sierra sharpening a knife with rhythmic scrapes that echoed like a heartbeat, Doc reviewing medical notes on a clipboard. "We don't rush blind," Logan said, his tone measured, the gravel in his voice underscoring the calm before resolve hardened. "Hale's exposed, but cornered animals bite. We package the proof, send it to clean channels, reporters, oversight boards. Iron Promise has contacts who owe favors, folks who've seen corruption's underbelly and walked away scarred but straight." Razor nodded, his fingers tapping a secure tablet where he'd already begun digitizing the files. The screen's glow reflected in his eyes, sharp as the tools he wielded. "I've got a line to a journalist in the city, ex-military. Hates the game as much as we do. No leaks till it's airtight. But Hale'll move fast. Expect surveillance, maybe a raid dressed as legal." The barn's air thickened with the scent of impending rain drifting in from outside, thunder rumbling distant like a warning growl. Elena set Maisie down gently, the girl scampering to play with a stray wrench. Its metallic clink, a child's symphony against the tension. Jack recorded more than threats, names, dates, enough to unravel the whole scheme. But they know we have it now. What if they come for us here? Her voice held the edge of a mother guarding her world, eyes flicking to the door, where two riders patrolled the perimeter, their bikes idling softly. Jack squeezed her hand, the gesture drawing her back to him. "They won't touch you, not with this crew. Trace, you pulled me out, now we finish it together." That desert promise, it wasn't just survival, it was about coming home whole. The words hung, weaving the past into the present, the initials JTR on Logan's skin, a bridge across years and miles. Logan felt the pull, not as burden but as purpose, the kind that turned wanderers into guardians. As dusk approached, painting the sky in deepening indigos, the outpost stirred with purposeful motion. Bull reinforced the gates with chains that rattled like oaths being locked in, while Sierra coordinated lookout shifts, her voice a low murmur into a radio. Logan stepped outside with Jack, the cooling air carrying the earthy promise of rain, droplets beginning to patter on the tin roof like hesitant applause. They walked the fence line, boots crunching gravel, the distant hum of town life a faint counterpoint to their conversation. "You look good for a ghost," Logan said, clapping Jack's shoulder lightly, the leather of his vest creaking. Jack chuckled, a sound rusty but genuine, the breeze tousling his hair. Felt like one in there. Days blurred, interrogations that twisted words into weapons. But thinking of Elena, Maisie, it kept the compass spinning. He paused, gazing at the hills where the mill lay hidden. Hale's not just greedy, he's scared. The water rights could flood the valley with development, but it's a cover for siphoning funds. Expose that, and his empire crumbles. Lightning flickered on the horizon, illuminating the landscape in stark flashes, shadows leaping like secrets unveiled. Logan nodded, the storm mirroring the ethical tempest brewing. "We ride at first light. Deliver the package ourselves. Doc's contact at the State Archive, neutral ground. No lone wolves, the full crew shadows." The rain intensified, sheets sluicing down, turning the ground to mud that clung to their boots. A sensory baptism washing away doubt. Back inside, the group shared a meal under lantern light, the stew's warmth spreading through them like shared blood. Maisie yawned, curling against Eleanor, her drawing from days ago now pinned to the wall, a family under sun, compass in the sky. Laughter broke through occasionally, stories of old runs lightening the load, but beneath it pulsed the moral core. Justice not as spectacle, but as the steady unveiling of truth, loyalty, as the chain that bound them against corruption's tide. Night deepened, the storm raging outside with winds that howled through cracks, rattling windows like impatient fists. Logan lay on a cot, sleep elusive, the tattoos outlined traced absently on his arm. Jack's rescue was a victory, but the promise extended, to dismantle the web that had ensnared him, to safeguard the land that symbolized more than soil, roots of honor, family forged in fire. Hale's reach loomed, a psychological shadow testing consciences, but iron promise stood unyielding, their chosen bonds a light piercing the gale. In the quiet hours, as rain drummed a relentless rhythm, Elena approached Logan's cot, her silhouette soft in the dim glow. "Thank you," she whispered, voice barely above the storm, "for keeping his promise alive." Logan sat up, the cot groaning. "It's ours now, all of us." She nodded, retreating to Jack's side, where Maisie slept soundly between them, untouched by the fray. Dawn would bring the ride. The confrontation not with fists, but with evidence that spoke louder than thunder. Redemption unfolded in layers, each turn of the road peeling back deceit, revealing the integrity that outlasted schemes. The compass pointed onward, through rain-slicked paths, toward a justice that healed the scars of silence, binding the lost into legacy. The first rays of a rain-washed dawn pierced the barn's eaves like tentative scouts, scattering the night's storm debris across the yard in puddles that mirrored the sky's clearing blue. The air hung crisp and cleansed, carrying the petrichor of soaked earth, mingled with the faint metallic tang of cooling engines, lined up like sentinels. Logan adjusted his vest, the iron promise patch stiff against his chest, as Jack clapped him on the back one last time, the gesture solid as the handshake they'd shared in desert heat. Maisie bounced on her toes nearby, clutching a small backpack stuffed with her drawing and a fresh muffin from Elena's hands, her laughter a bright counterpoint to the low murmur of the crew prepping for the ride. Elena's eyes, softened by the night's rest, met Logan's with a nod of unspoken gratitude, her fingers lingering on Jack's arm as if anchoring him to this fragile peace. "Package secure?" Logan asked Razor, who zipped a waterproof satchel with a decisive snap. The contents, digitized files, the recorder, affidavits sworn under lantern light, thudding softly inside. Razor's grin was sharp, eyes glinting like polished chrome. Airtight, Hale's web unravels with one leak. The team mounted up in a fluid rhythm, bikes humming to life with throaty purrs that vibrated through the ground, scattering gravel in small arcs. Jack rode with Elena now, Maisie sandwiched between them on a sturdy cruiser, her small helmet bobbing as she waved to the outpost fading behind. Logan led the convoy, the compass tattoo on his arm exposed to the breeze, its lines a faint itch urging him forward, not into vengeance, but toward the quiet triumph of truth laid bare. The road to the state archive wound through mist-draped valleys, the asphalt slick and shining, flanked by fields where wildflowers nodded in the wind's gentle push. The scent of blooming sage drifted in, cutting the diesel exhaust, as the group maintained a loose formation, scouts ahead, shadows behind, to evade any tales Hale might send. Logan's mind replayed Jack's tape, the urgency in his friend's voice, a fuel steadier than adrenaline. This wasn't about storming gates. It was the moral scalpel, slicing through corruption's veil to reveal the rot beneath. Doc rode close, his medic bag strapped tight, a reminder that some wounds healed only with exposure to light. The archive building rose on the outskirts of the county seat, a squat structure of weathered brick and glass that caught the morning sun in reflective panes. Neutral ground, run by a federal oversight liaison, Doc had pulled strings for, a no-nonsense archivist named Reyes, who'd traded favors for Iron Promise's aid in a past border crisis. They pulled into the lot under the guise of a routine delivery, engines cutting to a hush that amplified the distant hum of traffic. Logan dismounted first, satchel in hand, Jack at his side, the two men moving with the synced steps of old unit mates. Inside, the lobby smelled of polished wood and stale paper, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like hesitant witnesses. Reyes met them at the secure door, her sharp gaze scanning the group before nodding them through. "This better be ironclad," she said, voice clipped, leading them to a vaulted room where scanners whirred softly. Jack handed over the originals, his hands steady despite the tremor of finality. "It is. Names, transactions, Hale's funneling public funds into private pockets, water rights sold under the table, families displaced like footnotes." Reyes's fingers flew over keyboards, the air filling with the click of uploads and the faint whine of printers, spitting copies for chain of custody. Outside, the crew waited vigilant, Sierra's eyes on the mirrors for any unmarked vans that might slink in. By midday, the first ripples hit. Reyes's contacts forwarding packets to prosecutors, a quiet storm brewing in offices far from Willow Creek. Logan's radio crackled with updates, Hale's office scrambling, phones lighting up with denials that rang hollow. But the real test came as they rode back, the sun climbing high and baking the roads into shimmering waves. A blockade waited on the county line, 2 squad cars, lights flashing blue and red like false beacons, Hale himself stepping out from the lead, his suit rumpled, face flushed under the brim of a Stetson. The air thickened with tension, the scent of hot tar rising from the pavement, engines idling in a low growl that underscored the standoff. "Turner," Hale barked, his voice oily but cracking at the edges, flanked by deputies whose badges gleamed too brightly. "This ends now. Hand over whatever nonsense you've cooked up." Jack dismounted slowly, Elena shielding Maisie behind her, the girl's wide eyes fixed on her father with unshakable trust. Logan stepped forward, the satchel empty now, but its weight echoed in his stance. "It's over, Hale. Evidence is filed. Your schemes, bribes, forgeries, the mill, it's all public. Justice isn't yours to bury." Hale's laugh was forced, a bark that died in the heat. "You bikers think you can play hero. This is progress, land for the taking." But his eyes darted to the convoy, the Iron Promise riders forming a wall of leather and resolve, no weapons drawn, just the unyielding presence of oaths fulfilled. A deputy shifted uncomfortably, whispers of the unfolding scandal already buzzing on their radios. Jack spoke then, his tone even, carrying the desert's quiet strength. "Progress built on lies? You took my home, my freedom, but promises hold, family holds." Maisie peeked out, her small voice piping up. "Daddy's compass says you're wrong." Or the words hung, a child's truth piercing the bluster. Hale's shoulders sagged, the fight leaching out as sirens wailed in the distance, state investigators inbound, tipped by Reyes. He retreated to his car without another word, the blockade parting like fog under sun. The convoy rolled through unchallenged, the road ahead clear, Willow Creek welcoming them home under a sky vast and unburdened. Back at the farm, as evening draped the fields in gold, the crew gathered on the porch swing that creaked back to life. The air smelled of turned soil, and Elena's cooking wafting from the kitchen, roast chicken and fresh bread, scents of restoration. Jack signed the reclaimed deeds under lantern light, the papers crisp and final, while Maisie chased fireflies in the yard, her laughter mingling with the cricket's chorus. Logan leaned against the railing, the compass tattoo cooling in the breeze, its promise complete, not in erasure of scars, but in their transformation into stories of loyalty. Elena approached, pressing a mug of coffee into his hands, steam curling like grateful whispers. "You gave us more than protection. You brought him back, whole." Jack joined them, clapping Logan's shoulder again. "Brothers keep oaths, iron promises, you're family now." The words settled deep, weaving Logan into the tapestry of their chosen kin, Redemption a quiet horizon where justice bloomed from silence. As stars pricked the darkening sky, the farm stood reclaimed, a beacon against corruption's fade. Promises outlasted storms, loyalty the true north guiding through deceit. In Maisie's hug goodbye, Logan felt the cycle close, lost to legacy, scars to strength. The road called once more, but now with purpose shared, the compass ever true. Thank you for riding this journey with us. If these stories of honor and heart touched you, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We've got more tales of unbreakable promises coming your way. Your support keeps the fire burning.